G'day everyone and welcome to another episode of the Trekzone Spotlight. It's now 2018 here in Australia, which means it's time to look back at the year that was 2017. What's your opinion on this saga as it's unfolded?
Well, it's a very interesting, unusual saga. You know, it's something that I never expected to see. We've seen decades of fan-made works without much problem, and then here all of a sudden we had a lawsuit, and this lawsuit has gone places. It's been interesting. There's been lots of interesting discussion about the nuances of the legality of Star Trek, and it also proceeded a lot quicker than these disputes usually happen. There was fighting over such elements as whether the Klingon language could be copyrighted, and then both sides put forward their evidence. The judge made a ruling and allowed it to go to trial, and right before trial there was a settlement. I'm not so surprised that there's a settlement, but it's I guess I have mixed emotions about that. It would have been fascinating to watch the trial, but overall I'm glad that it worked out for all the parties.
Axanar, the settlement. What are your thoughts on that decision?
We haven't got that long, Matt.
I'll extend the booking if we need to, but the dot points. What are the dot points for your feelings?
It's a pretty simple story. People from around the world trusted Alec with somewhere between $1 and $2 million to make a movie. The money's gone, and there is no movie. They're upset. It's really that simple.
Well, look, we spoke last year about the whole thing that came about and how you got involved with the project and the way things quickly deteriorated once there was a clash of opinions. Now that Alec has been cleared to make Axanar and he has this studio, do you think it's a valuable commodity for him and it's going to be his cash cow to make this feature?
Wow. It'll remain to be seen what happens with the Axanar films. It's a matter of public record that, and in his own words, was said. I'm paraphrasing now. I'm sure that you guys can correct me. You heard this quote, right, Matt? It was either the studio is the end game or the end game is the studio. You've heard that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so in his own words, that was the goal, and that's why he was fortunate to get a settlement, because that really shouldn't have been the goal. The goal should have been to make the best fan film, and as we did with Prelude, get all that money up on the screen.
And the director and writer Gary O'Brien joins me now from his home in London. Gary, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, give us a spoiler-free plot summary of Chance Encounter.
Okay. I guess it's a short film, so giving a spoiler-free summary is tough because it's not very long. But basically, we have a love story, but because it has a sci-fi twist, it's not conventional, although it kind of actually is. We're using sci-fi to help us tell a conventional love story, but from a very unusual perspective. I don't know if that's a plot synopsis or not, but it's a description, if nothing else.
Having seen the short, I definitely think that's a perfect way to describe it. Knowing that it was only about a year ago that the idea started forming, were the guidelines and the whole Axanar saga, did they ever play into your mind about making Chance Encounter?
No, not really, because it was really crazy timing, because the Axanar thing was going on in the background, but we didn't give it much thought really. I think the scale of their production compared to ours, it's just a different kind of thing. We just, we weren't putting too much stock into it. But then it really kind of came to a head. I forget exactly when it was, sort of in this sort of about May or something, I guess, last year, is when the fan guidelines came out. And we were like literally halfway through our Kickstarter campaign. It was like a month-long campaign. It came out halfway through. So we were like, oh man, we should have done this like a year sooner, and then this would all just be not a problem, because at that point we didn't really know what would happen. but we were like, well, we've written our script and we're halfway through fundraising now, so let's just commit. And to be fair, most of the guidelines we were kind of in line with anyway, so we just thought, well, it's a bit late now. If they want to sue us, then they can they can go for it. I don't, what can you do?
I was spending the holidays in Astoria, Oregon, and I saw the same Hollywood Reporter article that I think everybody else did that announced the lawsuit had happened. And I had been at that point away from fan films for probably 7 years or so, so I wasn't actively involved in any way with them other than social connections I had with people who were still involved in the community. And so I was sort of dimly aware of Axanar. I was dimly aware of Prelude to Axanar. I hadn't seen it all the way through yet, but I'd heard that it had debuted at Comic-Con, and I knew that they were raising money and that they were doing that pretty successfully. I didn't know much more than that. I mean, I have friends who, on both sides of this case, I have friends who, were approached to work on Axanar. One who turned it down. Others who did go on to become involved with it. So I knew from them at least some of a little bit of the inside story, at least at the early stages. And it seemed to me like, yes, it was ambitious, which was great. It seemed to me that the approach was a very shrewd one about promising something big and then delivering little things to sort of impel people to continue to support financially the eventual big goal. Again, I don't have a problem with that, but it was pretty transparent that was what was happening, And so when Prelude came out, I was like, and when I finally saw it, what I thought was, well, it's great. I mean, it's fantastic. They've got some great actors in it. The effects look good. The direction was great. But it's being produced as a documentary, as a mock documentary. That gives you a lot of leeway in terms of how you tell a narrative, how you spin out a narrative that doesn't translate very well into regular narrative fiction or a feature-length narrative. And this isn't news. I mean, Rob Burnett, the director of Axanar, has said this himself. It was like making the Axanar feature would have been a totally different and bigger challenge than Prelude.
On the 22nd of March this year, Alec Peters launched another crowdfunding project aiming to keep the lights on at his studio. The studio he'd built from a shell of a warehouse he had an extended lease on. The trouble began when Alec ignored advice from his Prelude to Axanar team and forged ahead with the idea to build his own studio. And while he spent much of the $1.4 million retrofitting the warehouse, it sat idle for a year before CBS and Paramount filed their lawsuit against him. By January 2016, Alec had poured over $1 million into the studio, which still was not ready for any production work. He proclaimed that the lawsuit had sucked dry the bank account holding that $1.4 million of donor funds for the feature film. Rent and utilities was excessive at over $15,000 a month. The studio retrofit wasn't complete, and the sets were either not built or not completed. So Alec Peters did what Alec Peters knows best. He set about launching a crowdfunding campaign, selling the dream of a bright future where fan film producers could come and film in an industry-first, not-for-profit studio. Except that it isn't. Whether they had to pay or not for the privilege was contradicted in the pitch video.
Plus we have all these great sets from Axanar, and we want to have a place where we can set them up and we can use them, not just for our productions, for other people's productions or fan films. Maybe you have a fan film you want to make. Wouldn't it be great to have a place where you could come and use already built sets and do it for nothing? Well, that's what this Kickstarter is all about. Then student and fan filmmakers would be able to have access to a facility they usually wouldn't be able to afford for next to nothing.
This pitch video painted a bright future with a modern, well-appointed soundstage facility that would serve cash-strapped independent film producers and fan filmmakers. But it had become a money pit, and while Alec promised donors and loyalists that there were productions lined up to film there, it's never been shown that anyone has or will, especially with the lack of soundproofing on the soundstage. Now, we finally have new Trek to talk about. What are your first thoughts?
We finally have new Trek to talk about. It was going to have to happen sometime,
Yay!
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, there are a lot of details. I don't know what's been more surprising, the trailer or the continued reaction to the trailer in so many negative ways. But no, I'm thrilled. It's sometimes it's almost hard to remember that we've been in the TV Trek desert for 12 years. And even though these crumbs have been coming slowly, they are coming. So I've been a little amused at the people that still think that this is all somehow going to collapse, just because of the slowness of information coming out. But it makes complete sense that CBS All Access would wait and throw the biggest bang for the buck at the upfronts, which is where they're trying to they're going to start bargaining for advertising rates. And this is a streaming show, but there will be commercials for those who take it that way. So it makes sense that they would save their first big splash for the people they've got to impress financially, because this is, as we know, this is going to be a business, even though Netflix around the world has made such a big investment in the show and pre-sold it so largely.
Exactly right. And I think it's a little bit symbolic then that one of the opening shots in the CBS trailer at the upfronts was two of our lead characters walking in a desert to symbolise what we the fans have been going through for the 12 years, as you say.
Yeah, that's some really good double level imagery there for where we've been. Yeah, but that was shot in Jordan, which made history because it was the first time a Trek TV series had shot outside the country. And I mean, not until the last couple of JJ movies, the Kelvin movies, have they shot outside for anything. So that was really exciting to hear they'd busted the budget enough to do that. And of course, we don't know if it's connected or not, but the King of Jordan is a big Trek fan, and had been an extra on Voyager when he was the Crown Prince. So who knows if that had anything to do with it, but it didn't hurt. But it was amazing to see that.
There's certainly a nice tie-in. I think that Trek has just made that possible, and he's went from being the Crown Prince to hopefully and probably having a role in some of the great location imagery that we're going to see in Discovery.
Right. Well, it certainly made an impact on the audience there and on the audience around the world, which again is, I guess fandom shouldn't surprise me by now. And I'm a fan. I have my own peccadillos too. But, and I'm a big, background canon fan. But the reaction to the trailer and to everything so far has been amazing. But then again, as I am very quick to say, we've been here before. You had Next Generation had a huge pushback. Enterprise had the huge pushback. Now in history, looking back in hindsight, it seems ridiculous. There are little quaint little nods. Before Wrath of Khan, when word leaked out that Spock was going to be killed off because Nimoy wanted to at the time, there was a big consumer activist pushback with a marketing survey to show how much Paramount and the movie would lose in VCR rentals and in box office and in licensing toys if it wasn't changed so that Spock didn't die. There was this big thing. And of course, Wrath of Khan is still the benchmark for all Star Trek movies.
Joining me right now is the producer, the star, and the maker of it, Aaron Vanderklay. Aaron, thanks so much for your time, man.
No worries, pleasure to be here.
Now, what got you started on all of this?
Well, there were a number of factors for this one. First of all, I was trying to write basically a pirate story for one of my friends who's a very talented actress. And as I was putting it together, it just sort of kept turning into a Star Trek story. And we wanted it to be on this sort of the ship, and she was this pirate queen that was supposed to pillage other ships, and she'd meet this sort of rag and bone man character, this derelict, on one of these boats. And every time I wrote it, it just kept turning into a Star Trek story, which is funny because the previous one was more of a generic story that I just happened to tell in the Star Trek universe. But yeah, so I kept writing this story and it just wasn't working, so I sort of gave up on it. The second thing was I was working on a Doctor Who spin-off series called Sarah Jane Investigates, and we filmed a bit of content and turned it into a Kickstarter campaign, and it was all going quite well. And as soon as I launched the Kickstarter campaign, the trolls started coming out. And it was really interesting because there's a distinct difference between sort of British Doctor Who fandom and American Star Trek fandom. Americans are really positive about their fandom, and they create amazing sets, as you know, amazing sets, and the production design for building these amazing sets and accurate props and costumes is just so cool. And in the UK, Doctor Who is something that's on TV, merchandise is just saturated with, audio books and magazines and comic strips and, barbecue tongs and all this kind of stuff. And they pay a license fee for that product. So they're really not interested in paying for fan films, I guess. And, the fan film community there is limited to, 12-year-olds in their backyard, which is what I was doing at 12 years old, making Doctor Who films. And, in the States, it's, full, warehouses with, massive sets and stuff like that. So that was a bit of a shame for that project, and I just sort of decided to can it, basically. And then working as a freelance filmmaker, particularly in the western side of Australia, it's a lot of promotional work, a lot of promotional contents with businesses that don't understand or appreciate the amount of effort and time that goes into work, and also they're not interested in paying on time. And I sort of realized that filmmaking for me was a hobby that turned into my job, and I didn't enjoy it as a job, so I sort of wanted to turn it back into a hobby, and that's why this film came about.
Did you crowdfund for The Derelict?
No. I don't think, like, for me personally, making these sort of Star Trek fan films, I don't think it's a big enough project that I think I would need to do crowdfunding. And certainly with the sort of new guidelines that came out, didn't even want to venture into anything like that, so I didn't even think about it. And for the most part, we reused some of the sets that we had last time and sort of revamped them, but it came all out of my pocket, basically.
Can I ask how much your total budget was there, do you know?
I didn't actually keep a record of it. I probably should have, but it was probably, north of about $5,000.
Aaron Vanderclay there, a very talented young man hailing from my hometown of Perth, Western Australia. Now, as you saw there in that retrospective, one of the major stories here on Trekzone this year has once again been Axanar, and I've received some comments about my continued coverage on that, asking me to just move on, or as Kylo Ren might say, let the past die. But while he continues to control dissension by banning people and refusing to allow another point of view in the comment section of his website, I'll do my best to counter his narrative, and that will continue into 2018. Also continuing in 2018 is this very podcast with this brand new studio. The plan is to produce more often while returning to the original mission to interview every sci-fi alumni in the world. Well, that's the plan anyway. Also in 2018 is Destination Star Trek, Europe's official Trek convention. They took 2017 off, so I'm working on coverage plans for that. Details coming in the next month or so. The Patreon campaign is now officially closed and axed. I feel that I should be working within my means and producing content because I love it. It's my hobby. It's what I want to do. To those of you that have signed up as patrons, well, thank you very much for your support. But because I hadn't really engaged in the content creation side of things as yet, I will be reaching out in the next day or two, if I haven't already, to offer complete and full refunds. And to the dedicated Star Trek podcasts out there that are supplementing their income from patrons and possibly even living off patron donations. I know that there is one podcast out there that's using patron funds to travel around the world and upgrade personal computing equipment. I think those sort of people are living in dangerous times, because we all know a certain executive producer that raised $1.4 million in a crowdfunding campaign, paid himself a salary, and then got sued. So it's not something that I'm willing to entertain. It's not something I think I should need to entertain, because, as I said, it's a hobby. I enjoy doing it, and I should just keep doing it the way that I'm doing it. All that great stuff is coming up in 2018. I'm very much looking forward to it, and you're going to see the fruits of my labour of love here on the Trekzone Spotlight throughout 2018.